This May, my mom, son Braden, and I had the opportunity to go to Israel. We walked along the Mediterranean Sea in Caesarea, collecting shells and rocks to bring home. After we left Caesarea, we went to Acre, where we walked in the old city of the Crusades, and we visited the Al-Jazir Mosque. Staying in Acre was amazing as we watched the sun set over the old city and the Mediterranean Sea. The next day, we traveled to Mount Carmel, where Elijah challenged the prophets of Baal. On this site now stands the Carmelite Monastery. There is also a statue dedicated to Elijah's triumph. After Carmel, we decided to go to Megiddo to see the tell of all the old cities, and we traveled under the walls using the old water tunnel. It was amazing to see the oasis in the desert. In Nazareth, we went to a village that depicts what the village would have been like when Jesus lived there. Upon leaving, we were given an oil lamp to serve as a light for our path. From Nazareth, we went to Mount Arbel, where Herod defeated the rebels and won his crown. It was a long climb to the top, and we were exhausted by the time we got there. From Mount Arbel, we had our first look at the Sea of Galilee. This boat was found in the mud in the Sea of Galilee. It has been dated to the time of Jesus. This is the boat that we rode on the Sea of Galilee in. There is a police boat next to our wooden boat because our crew rescued 2 jet skiers who had fallen off their jet ski. They were in the water without life jackets for 4 hours. We enjoyed a nice relaxing ride and sundown worship on the Sea of Galilee. We could actually picture Jesus sleeping in the boat on the water. Being a water lover, Braden was tempted to jump overboard to swim. The crew recommended against it. Instead, we tried to get him to do the Titanic pose at the bow of the boat. This was as close as we got. On Sabbath morning, we walked by the Catholic Church and then proceeded to walk down the Mount of Blessings. Halfway down the Mount of Blessings, there is a flat area. It's not hard to imagine Jesus standing here addressing the crowd. The sound echoes up the mount like a Roman theater, and you can hear perfectly at the top. This is the famous tile floor at the Church of the Loaves and Fishes. I found it interesting how you have to pay to use the washroom at these Catholic sites. Again, Braden was looking for rocks. He actually juggled for our group with rocks from the Sea of Galilee. I cringed though when I thought of how much his suitcase would weigh when we flew home. Mom and son relaxing and cooling off in the Sea of Galilee. After spending time in the water, we headed to the city of Capernaum and walked on the old synagogue ruins. Close to the synagogue is Peter's mother-in-law's house. There is now a church over the ruins. The church has a glass floor so you can look down and see the actual ruins underneath. This is the place in Capernaum where the fishermen may have had their boats to catch the tilapia or St. Peter's fish. After Capernaum, we drove to northern Israel to the headwaters of the Jordan River, underneath Mount Hermon. One place we visited was Caesarea Philippi, where Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do you think I am?" From there we traveled to Dan and saw the beautiful oasis, an ancient city built by the tribe. The ancient walls are still standing today, including the stone that refers to the house of David. This is a picture of the altar in front of the temple. They constructed an iron representation to show exactly how big the altar would have been. This is the actual floor from the temple in Dan. It was great to be able to actually walk on the ruins and not be kept back with ropes. This is the oldest gate found in Israel. It is believed that Abraham traveled here to rescue his nephew Lot before heading down to Hebron. The Jordan River leaves the Sea of Galilee along the southern end. It continues down to the Dead Sea. This is the traditional baptismal site. The original site was not opened until about a year ago. Apparently, Braden did not think collecting rocks was enough. He also brought back water from the Sea of Galilee and the Jordan River. I found the Jordan River to be disgusting. I can understand why Naaman did not want to bathe in it. Even the stairs were slimy, and I nearly slipped and fell in. Bet Shean is the second largest archaeological site in Israel, preceded only by Jerusalem. This city was leveled by natural disaster, as so the streets and buildings were never built on again. It is a great example of Roman architecture. I sat in the Roman theater to listen to the orator. The sound here is crystal clear, even without mics, and you can hear from anywhere in the theater. This is the stage, and the original wall still stands behind the stage to help with the sound projection. It was a little unnerving when we crossed into the West Bank to see the soldiers with their weapons, and they came on the bus and actually checked to make sure that we didn't have any Palestinians aboard. As we traveled down by Jericho, we came to the site believed to be the actual site of the Israelite crossing. This is also the site believed to be where Jesus was actually baptized. It was only opened 1 year ago. The far bank that's behind me is actually the country of Jordan. There are Israeli soldiers and Jordanian soldiers who watch each other 24/7. The border between Israel and Jordan is protected by a minefield. After leaving the Jordan River, we had lunch at a Bedouin tent set up in the style of Abraham. We had to ride a camel to go down into the valley to eat at the tent. We were served a traditional Bedouin meal, seated on cushions at low tables. Finally, we ended the day at Bethlehem. There is a mosque and a minaret in the same plaza as the Church of the Nativity. You can see in this picture how the entrance to the Church of the Nativity has changed. They were forced to make the entrance smaller so soldiers could not ride their horses into the church. You also have to bend and show reverence to even fit through the door. The next morning, we saw the sun rise over the Temple Mount from the Mount of Olives. In this picture, you can see the Muslim cemetery along the eastern wall, and the Jewish cemetery is located on the Mount of Olives, opposite the Muslim cemetery. This is one of my favorite pictures, with the Dome of the Rock in the background. The Garden of Gethsemane has olive trees that are actually thousands of years old. The Israelis have done a beautiful job maintaining this garden. After visiting the Garden of Gethsemane, we entered the Old City from the eastern side. The Lion's Gate is the only remaining gate since the Muslims sealed the Golden Gate. The Pool of Bethsaida has had many churches and other temples built over it. Now there are many ruins from both Christian and pagan temples. The musical acoustics in this church are amazing. It is one of the best preserved Crusader churches in Israel. The Arab markets along the Via Dolorosa were noisy and busy. It was not a place where I enjoyed shopping. The merchants were very pushy. One of the things you have to get used to in Israel is the large military presence. This is a unit of the Israeli Defense Force, and they're parading outside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. In the Jewish quarter, the ruins of the Roman Cardo and other ruins are protected for the visitors to enjoy. There were many people in the upper room when we went that day. It never looked like this in Jesus' time. In fact, King David's tomb is on the lower level of this church. As we walked down Mount Zion, it was interesting to see Oskar Schindler's grave. He is buried here as an honor for what he did during the Holocaust. These are the original steps along the path that leads from Mount Zion to the Kidron Valley and the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus would have taken this path after the Last Supper. The Zion Gate leads from Mount Zion back into the Old City. You can still see the bullet holes from the Six-Day War on this gate. We ended our visit that day at the Western Wall. It is a holy place for Jews because it is the only exposed section that would have been closest to the Holy of Holies. The next morning, we arrived at the Jaffa Gate and David's Citadel to walk the ramparts. These ramparts would have been used to defend Jerusalem during the Crusades. There are many crenellations and pathways for soldiers to defend Jerusalem. Braden and I paused to sit at the corner where the western rampart meets the southern rampart. We also visited Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum. This museum is a very sobering place, and they do a lot of Holocaust research here as well. There are many actual artifacts and tributes to all those who perished during the final solution. After Yad Vashem, we headed to Mount Herodium and climbed the steps to the mountain palace of Herod. We did a lot of walking and climbing while we were in Israel. After seeing Herod's tomb, we headed to the Garden Tomb. This is the second possible site for the crucifixion and burial. We had communion here and found that we thought it was the most like what we envisioned the place where Jesus was buried. Outside of the Garden Tomb is the Damascus Road and Gate. This was the beginning of the Roman Cardo, or the Roman Road. Another reason why I think that the Garden Tomb is more likely to be the spot where Jesus was killed and buried than the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The next day we left Jerusalem and headed to the Dead Sea area. We traveled to Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. Here is an ongoing archaeological dig by a university in the States. This is one of the caves where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. This is the Judean desert. It is not a sandy desert like I envisioned it to be. In this picture, you can see the salt along the edge of the Dead Sea. The Israelis have put a lot of money into harnessing the salt for use in cosmetics and body creams. It is a major industry in Israel. This picture is taken looking down from the top of Masada to where King Herod had his palace. Masada was predominantly a fortress, not a palace. It was meant to be a place where Herod could take refuge. The view of the Dead Sea from Masada was beautiful, but it was very hot up the mountain. Thankfully, we rode a cable car and didn't have to walk. On the way back from Masada, we stopped at the oasis at En-Gedi. It is now a nature preserve where you can find the Ixtapi, which is Israel's national animal. We had fun relaxing and floating in the Dead Sea. Braden, however, was disappointed because he thought he would actually be able to walk on the water. He cheered up, however, when he got to paint himself black with the Dead Sea mud. What a way to exfoliate your body. I got into the fun as well. It was very hot while you wait for 5 minutes before washing it off. I highly recommend to anyone to visit Israel. It was a life-changing and humbling experience to actually be able to sit and walk where Jesus spent his life. I am so glad I got to experience it with my mom and my son. It was truly the trip of a lifetime.